All right, come with me. I got to show you something. And you got to see it to believe it. Look at this. What do you see? What's this? People. And then me, among other real-life human beings. Well, junior mining people? How's that possible? Why am I out of the dungeon? I've been allowed to venture out of the dungeon and off into the real world, and I found my way to Zurich for the Precious Metals Summit. What you see behind me is a cocktail reception, but think about it for a second. Those are the titans of our industry. Those are people who've devoted their lives, their livelihoods, and their careers to junior mining, which might explain why the open bar is that busy at 8 o'clock in the morning. Jokes aside, this is of course the closing reception, and they're actually behaving way better than I expected them to. Probably because this was this was an aggressive 2 days of back-to-back meetings, not a lot of food, not a lot of sleep, but a whole lot of coffee. And it was free coffee too, which means that I had more coffees than there are junior mining companies that have underexplored projects in elephant countries that are open in all directions. That's a whole lot of coffee. Now, what I did at this conference is I went to talk to the companies I already know, companies I've previously interviewed at length and in depth, and ask them, what are they doing with your money as a shareholder? Why are they here? Why are they spending their marketing dollars here? What's the goal? What are they planning to achieve? What's the story they're pitching? Who are they pitching it to? What kind of investors do they want to attract? And I also wanted to know if there's something wrong with our industry. Like for real, what's happened this week with the metals prices? Why do we all of a sudden have a correlation between junior and metal prices? When metal prices go up, juniors stay flat, no correlation. Metal prices go down, all of a sudden there's a correlation. What's going on? Is there something wrong in our industry? You know, all the fun stuff that we talked about. And here's a list of the very few companies who wanted to get in front of the camera with me. There's the timestamps with them. Go and watch that. But also let me know, what else should I be asking at the next conference, if I'm allowed in, that is, because I will run out of ideas pretty soon. Happens to me a lot. I tried to record this thing 27 times, and I'm already forgetting my jokes, which are only half funny. So let's listen to the CEOs. All right, I'm standing here with Tony Retta of Tectonic Metals. Sir, what are you doing here? You do some of these conferences, not all of them, but I saw you again at Rick Krull's thing. I think you were at Beaver Creek. Yep. You're doing another one. What are you hoping to achieve, and specifically in Europe, what are you doing? What's the goal of your marketing campaign here?
Yeah, well, Zurich is one of the financial capitals of Europe. They also know gold and commodities, so there's a history of that. We also have a history of raising capital out in Europe, more specifically here in Zurich. So the intention behind this conference is to meet with potential shareholders, existing shareholders, and others, perhaps service providers, things of that nature. But you can kill a bunch of birds with one stone, and there's some additional marketing that I'm doing here in the city as well.
I hope you're not trying to kill any service providers, because I kind of felt that almost personally.
Well, this is a great opportunity to interact with you, right? So the thing I'd like to do with any event or any company initiatives is to maximize my return on it. So if I'm just going to go to Zurich and stand here or do a couple meetings, or I can do that and do dinners, meetings in and around the city, use it as a launching pad to another European city, and to meet and converse with you, which gives me, media exposure and things of that nature. So, make every dollar go as far as possible.
What's return, though? That's an interesting question with marketing. It's not as tangible. So what are you hoping to achieve? You want new investors. You want to inform your current one. You're looking for strategic deals. What exactly are you looking for?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because sometimes with marketing, you really have to take a step back and assess, okay, how do I measure the success of this marketing or corporate initiative? So for me, one metric could be the amount of meetings, the quality of meetings. Perhaps there could be sometimes share price, like buying in the open market, could be volume. I'm also trying to solidify relationships and also plant seeds for future financings. We've learned through the last, maybe decade or so, that capital doesn't come from North America anymore. You have to look outside of that region. And so I have, the last few financings, I have a lot of European investors. So when Canada's on strike or Bay Street is on strike, you got to learn to shift and cast your fishing rod in a different lake, if you will, to catch that fish. So the return I use is just, a lot of it's internally, like, did these meetings go well? Is there any future follow-up? Is there potentially a financing order? Maybe there's also corporate synergies. That's another thing that I come to these conferences to also see, learn, and meet with my peers. We're all traveling in different directions, but you congregate here, and I don't know what the total number is, but I think there's probably about 50 to 100 exploration and mining companies here. So I can meet with them, and maybe there's corporate synergies that are available to me. So it's a broad band of sort of metrics to validate the decision to come here, whether or not there was some ROI. And sometimes you put your best foot forward, and then you walk away from that conference, and you're like, shoot, that was a waste of time and money. Usually, I've rarely experienced that because there's enough history here that you kind of know what you're getting into. And a lot of the onus falls on yourself. Like, how can I make, even if the conference is a 7 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, how can I make that a 9 out of 10? And maybe I need to get outside of these four walls and go and meet with, a lot of the money managers, the family offices. Within this 5 to 10 block radius, there's probably about 800 family offices here. Yeah.
When you go and talk to them, or when you're just trying to get new investors interested in the story of Tectonic Metals, what exactly are you telling them? What are you finding that resonates the most? What are you selling? Are you selling size? Are you selling grade? Are you selling? What are you selling?
I think if I was an investor, and what I try to lead first is with people. That's the only real asset in the mining space or with any company. So you can invest in a ticker symbol. You can invest in a billboard on, when a chat or whatever, or a newsletter recommendation, or you can actually meet the person that you're giving your capital to and saying, can I trust this gentleman, or this person, I should say, to execute on what he's saying? So really, it's an opportunity for them to meet the person behind the company, to learn about the vision and the strategy, why do we exist, what's our intention, and where we're going to be in the next 12 to 24 to 36 months. So I try to get that across, and then we can dive into the granularity of the company, the near-term catalyst, why we're excited about this drill hole or this drill bit, or a relationship with the local communities or the indigenous groups, things of that nature. And you try to do that all within 25 minutes or 20 minutes, which is a lot. And sometimes it's just a matter of just getting to know one another, and you don't even have to flip a page. For them to walk away and say, I want to put Tectonic on my watch screen, that's a win. Or me to them follow up and say, hey, did you have any questions? Would you like a follow-up meeting, which may be an hour long? That's a win for me.
You do have some assays coming up.
Yes.
Is that what you're excited about, or are you losing sleep over it?
Maybe a bit of both.
Okay.
I would think anybody would be lying. Like, we're dealing with a, I always tell people, including my kids, like this, the diameter of a drill hole is 2.5, 3 inches, and you're driving it 200 to 300 meters below the surface. You can't be like, I'm gonna get it, I know where it is. Mother Nature, is not that easy. So I think you always lose a bit of sleep, but there is a bit of there's actually a lot of excitement. It's kind of like Christmas morning, hoping you get that present that you've always wanted. So I am excited. There's 16 holes that are pending, and we expect to have assay results here this month, the initial batch, and then the subsequent weeks, then the following, the remainder, if you will.
You're not giving your kids drill core for Christmas, are you?
No drill core. Although Dad wouldn't mind some good drill core, gold bearing drill core specifically.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You have money right now, I believe.
Yes.
Just got the money in.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it on the back of these assays? I suppose people want to see drilling, and I suppose that's what people are asking you. So.
Yeah. So we were at a point where the money, it took what it took to get the money in. We did raise $5 million, but it didn't all come in one shot. So the first tranche was $3 million. That we got in via the capital raise, and that was like, okay, yes, now let's go drill with that. And then we were hoping to get the other second batch closed quicker, but we had to make the decision to stop drilling, and that's fine too. So this capital is now going to give us enough runway for the next year, as far as, not necessarily for drilling, but there's enough capital to do other initiatives. We have some I can't speak of exactly, but we do have a few ideas in the hopper right now. And pertaining to flat itself, what I'm really excited about now, I can say, is that we have 2 kilometers of drilled strike. With the drill holes pending, we could potentially have 3 kilometers into a new area. So, I don't know if anyone realizes, sometimes we say these distances kind of like haphazardly, but 3 kilometers or 2 kilometers, that is a massive, if you can turn that into a deposit, that is going to be massive. So there's enough meat on the bone to say, okay, let's start looking at this from a resource estimate perspective. What are we dealing with? And internally, the whole point of the metallurgical results that we announced, those heap leach column tests, were to validate the heap leach potential. And that came back with a screaming woohoo, yes. I was insanely excited about that. That, to me, is the most important news release for our company this year. But to take that take this potential resource that we're going to be doing in-house and start wrapping some economics around this. So that capital is being used to hire a resource estimator to do an internal scoping study, and then depending on the results, we can formulate a strategy and communicate that strategy to the markets next year. And where this is all going is that if you think you have a mine, stop talking about it, show me. And so that's what the metallurgy was about. We're not going to be scared to put our neck out, because if it came back with shit, then we're like, okay, this is not, we have to reroute, look at this project differently. But so far, everything's been lining up accordingly, and that's kind of the intentions for as we look into 2025. We'll use these drill results, but regardless of those drill results, there's enough meat on the bone now where we have 2 Ks of strike, down to 300 meters vertical. We can start wrapping our head around a resource and possibly some sort of economics to either present to the market or present to someone who comes in under non-disclosure, like a corporate, a major mining company, and really say, okay, like we're putting this up on a platter, continuing with the Christmas tree. Here's your Christmas present. Do you want this or not? Is this worth doing?
You're kind of stealing my thunder, because that's what I wanted to ask. I wanted to seem smart here and ask you, who's the market for you? Is it us, retail investors, or is it you looking for a strategy to come in and help you actually grow and develop this thing?
Yeah, and I guess, my approach as a CEO is to keep all optionality is the most important thing. Sometimes what I want doesn't matter. Like I might want this drill hole TEDx and it doesn't do that. I might want a Newmont to come in and take me out or come in as a partner, but ultimately they're driving their bus, I'm driving my bus. So what I like to do is present options and see who I want to date. And based on the terms available, we'll make a decision. Based on market conditions, we'll make a decision there. Going back to the financing, do I want to be raising money at 6 cents? No, I hate that. Sorry, I just swore that came out. But no, that's not my intentions. But do I want to sit on my hands for a year? No, I don't want to do that either. So you got to take the dilution. The dilution is the gas in the car. It's like me and you are sitting in this Ferrari and we're not going anywhere. Well, we got to fill the tank up with gas, or we're just going to sit here and enjoy this beautiful vehicle as is, which is still a win in many ways. But I want to test drive this thing. I want to drive it. So that's the approach. And so I'm really emphasizing that what I want. Okay, I can't change this. There's things I can control. So how do we make the best out of this situation right now? And so I'm going to be continuing my dialogue with corporates, private equity, our partners, our top shareholders, and I'm going to lay out, these are the options in front of us for next year. We can raise X amount to work towards a resource. We can keep doing exploration drilling. We can sit on our hands because we have enough capital, wait for a better market. So these are, at least we have options. Most companies are on their last breath and they're like, shit, what do we do now? And they're just kind of going into turtle mode. And one thing I would say about Tectonic is that we've never really gone into turtle mode, but maybe that's the best, thinking out loud, or maybe defense is the best offense and you need to kind of sometimes go to turtle mode and just like take a pause too. So maybe that's what the next couple of months will be for us as well.
Well, I hope you're not changing your name to Defense Metals. Tectonic sounds better.
No.
When you go and talk to these guys here, what I deem to be smart money, family offices, institutional investors, you tell them this story. What's the pushback you get? What do they have questions about, or what do they deem as a risk that you're currently solving?
I think the biggest pushback is, let me think about this, but the first thing that comes to mind is the broader markets. Trump is in power, the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, they're ripping. And then you got gold that's come off a bit, and you got Tectonic and other exploration companies. I always say money follows money. You can't ignore where the S&P might be here in the next 6 months. And a lot of people are just shifting capital into there. So that's the backdrop. And here I come and say, hey, buy this junior exploration company. So that would say, like, the fact that the markets are performing so well, NVIDIA, the AI, they're just like, that's gotten everyone's attention. And now with Trump in power, I think that's just getting amplified, that there could be a lot of runway in front of us for that to perform. Now, specific to Tectonic, the pushback is like, okay, great, you got this awesome asset. How do you take a 6 cent story and turn it into $1? And how do you get the capital to make that happen? So yeah, we've raised $5 million this year. We raised a similar amount last year, which is great. But to really do something meaningful, you need like 10 plus million. So how are we going to make that happen to really move the dial? And I think for shareholders, for some family offices, it's like, how do I wrap my head around that opportunity? I think when we meet with family offices or corporates that have geologists on their team, they're like, wow, this is a fascinating project, but trying to make the connection between, capital, share price, and how to go from here. And this is not just a Tectonic. This is a lot of companies, because I'm an investor too. They're just like, okay, great, you think this is the next 5 million ounces, but you need, again, gas in the car. How are you going to get there? And what are you going to do in the next 6 months for me that's going to re-rate your stock?
What are you going to do in the next 6 months? Not to re-rate the stock, but over the next, let's talk 6, 12, 18 months. What exactly do you have coming up? You have those assay results?
Yeah. So assay results, and not just assay results, put them out the market. Like our team and myself included, like we have to geologically interrogate those results. You're trying to extrapolate from one or several drill holes what it means in relationship to the other drill holes, in relationship to the surface mineralization, to the theory, or maybe it's a geophysical anomaly. Like, why was that hole put there? Why did it hit? Why did it not hit? And then you're also mapping out lithological and other controls, and so that can take months. So that's happening. In addition to that, we've engaged a resource estimator to start doing a back of the envelope, sort of what potential size, grade, continuity we're dealing with, what would be compliant based on the existing drill holes, what would not be compliant, and when I say not compliant, that means it just needs more drilling because the holes are like 500 meters apart. So what kind of drill spacing is required to get to an inferred? And then we have an engineer on our team who's world-renowned, actually, and someone that led the Kootenay feasibility study. So I've already spoken to him. We're going to be doing our own internal engineering study. And again, the foundation for any engineering economic study is a resource, but you have to we don't have that compliant, but we have enough meat to start getting a sense what the economics might look like for this project. And we actually have an analyst that covers that has done something similar with his limited data, but we have the whole kit and caboodle. So that's going to be happening. And then obviously taking this data, the new results, and meeting with corporates, major miners, private equity, and then developing a strategy for 2025. And if you follow Tectonic, every year we come up with a strategy in Q1 usually. And to recap, 2024 strategy was to identify areas that could be potential starter pits. We also wanted to validate heap leaching, so by doing metallurgical test work. The third thing is we found historical drill core from 2003 that wasn't fully assayed, so we sent that to the laboratory. The other plan was to raise like $5 million and to go drill test some new areas of Chicken Mountain. And I actually haven't communicated this. Now it's just hitting me right now. Thank you for that. We actually executed on all of that. That was put out in the first quarter. And if you said to anyone, regardless of share price, hey, Mr. CEO of Junior Mining Company XYZ, or hey, my third largest shareholder, Antonio, if I did metallurgy heap leach testing for the first time and told you we're going to find out if this thing's heap leachable. If I said, hey, we're going to raise $5 million, we're going to go drill these 3 new target areas. And by the way, I found 7 historical drill holes that weren't assayed, and we're going to go relog that core and assay it. Would you say that'd be a good year?
I would.
Well,
I'll think about it, but
well, I mean, I challenge any. There's great companies out there, but who has done this in this sort of environment? So we've executed. So we'll do the exact same thing next year. And I think it's important for us to have a game plan, and I think it's important for our shareholders to know what exactly we're going to do with our capital.
Yeah, exactly. I know we have to run now. We've got people to meet, places to be. What am I forgetting to ask you, though? What's important here at the end?
I don't know. What's important to ask? I think, I don't know. I think, I got to think about that. What would you ask?
You delivered. Well, I'm trying to think about it, but no, you delivered on all fronts. Yeah. That's important. You have another year coming up where you're cashed out. I think we've covered it well. I think in a couple of months, when you have those assets, we'll sit down for a longer conversation, go through everything, just maybe do a geo deep dive, see what you're coming up with. Hopefully that resource. So no, I think we covered it well. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
And I'm standing here with Jim McDonough of Kootenay Silver. Sir, I've seen you all over the place. You do conferences, you do some online stuff. Why? What do you hope to achieve? What is it exactly that you're after with your marketing campaign?
Well, we're here in Zurich at the show, and we come here every year. We come here twice a year to Zurich, different shows. first of all, to see existing shareholders that have invested in the company and update them, and to look for people who are interested in investing in silver, new people, new shareholders, and that's why we're here.
It's new shareholders specifically that you're after, though, or is it informing your current shareholders, but also new shareholders, or is it also maybe looking for a strategic? Is that something that kind of happens at these conferences where you might get a strategic deal or a bigger investment?
Yeah, so it's really the shareholders, so institutional and high net worth that we're after, existing and new. We're always interested in getting new people into the deal. This kind of show typically is not where you get strategics showing up. At this particular show, so this focus here is on the investor.
Is a strategic something you're after to begin with, though? Is that something that would fit the Kootenay story?
Well, yeah, and we've done that in the past. We've had investments on prior discoveries from major mining companies 3 different times. Coeur Mining invested at one point, La Ceguera discovery, Agnico Eagle, an original Promontorio discovery, Mexico, and then Pan American on what we call the Negra. So, yeah, we do consider that, absolutely.
And then when you go and talk to these institutional investors that you're after, what's the story that you're selling them? Are you selling them a story of grade? Are you selling them a story of size? Is it both? What are you selling?
Yeah, well, it depends a little bit on the investor. So some of the investors that we have are merely interested in our silver resources, so like a silver bank and leverage of the silver price. So out of the 3 deposits, 2 of them start to look interesting, about $30. And then we have the classic discovery upside going on right now with our 4th discovery called Columbo, which is our best one to date in terms of grade. Size potential is excellent. It's got the potential for multiples of 100 million ounces even. And grades and widths there are fantastic. So when you get a high-grade deposit, it's going to work in any kind of silver environment. So that's where we're really focused, and that's driving most of the investor interest right now.
Talk to me about that upside potential that you're bringing up here with that Ford discovery. What does that specifically look like? Like, how big could this thing get? And then subsequently, really the thing that I suppose investors care the most about, what is that going to do to your share price?
Well, it'll drive it up. And
quantify.
How big? Well, no, wouldn't quantify that. But how big could this new discovery be? It could be 200 million, 300 million ounce kind of thing even. And that would take some time to get it there. Drilling, lots of drilling really, is what it requires. But one step at a time. First things first. We're in the middle of a 20,000 meter drill program right now. By the end of the year, we'll be done or almost done, which puts us in a position for a maiden resource, the very first resource, by the late in the first quarter.
200 to 300 million ounces. Now you're talking Vizsla silver type of size. Where's that estimate coming from?
Yeah, so it's coming from 2 things: our drill results and the physical aerial size of our vein system. So we've got it looks like a vein district that's 4 kilometers by 3 kilometers. So that kind of footprint, when our presentation, you can go online and look at our presentation, we have our veins on a map, the Vizsla district, and we have Las Chispas, which is about 140 million ounces. And so physical size compares well. Okay, that's a start. But then you really have to have the results. So then we've got, to date, we have drilled, we've released holes up to 171 holes so far, and now we're at about 40,000 meters of drilling in total. And so the results out of all that work are fantastic. So they're really supporting the thesis that, hey, you're going to have 100 million or 200 maybe, or maybe 300 in this district eventually.
How much drilling did it take Vizsla Silver to get to that amount? I don't know how many ounces they have right now, but I think it's among that 300 million ounce.
It's about 300, yeah.
How much drilling did it take him, do you know?
Oh, they would have drilled, well, to get to that stage, I don't know the answer, but I know it's going to be well north of 100,000 meters.
Is there anything that you can do that you don't have to drill that many meters, but where you can go to that size of a deposit because you've learned what they've done, or because you've learned something else, or is it going to take you that much drilling?
In a vein system, which this is, usually it'll take you that much drilling. Different styles of deposit that are more disseminated in nature, more uniform, then you can get away with less drilling. But on these kind of things, it requires a lot of drilling. So the Las Chispas discovery, for example, which is Silvercrest, their first resource was somewhere around 60 million ounces, I believe. And it was around 50,000 or 60,000 meters of drilling.
Yeah. Is that, by the way, fair? Now that you said the Las Chispas, am I being fair in comparing you to Ridgeline in any way outside of size? Like, is it geologically similar, or is it more similar to something else?
Yeah, no, the geologically similar. These all are classic vein systems, and so, but every area has its own unique characteristics and differences. But geologically, same kind of thing, same kind of deposits.
Right. 20,000 meters of drilling, how much money is that going to cost you? Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, so we're funded on that 20,000 meters. We're already halfway through it. We did a financing in April to finance that, a $10 million financing. We will finish this program and exit with approximately $4 million in the treasury.
Okay, so after you finish it, you have $4 million. How's G&A for you? What are you burning?
A year, it's about 2 million Canadian,
Okay.
2.25 to 2.5 million Canadian. Includes our geologic staff. So when we're drilling, well, even when we're not drilling, they're actually out in the field doing work. So it's not really an administrative cost in its entirety, but that's what it is.
So no need to raise capital before the end of the program. How's that going to go chronologically? So you say you're halfway through it. How are you going to be releasing assays? I suppose you're kind of batching it somehow, but talk to me about chronologically. Next month, 3 months, 6 months, what are we seeing in terms of news?
Every several weeks, so probably every anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks, we'll be seeing results come out in batches. Yeah, we'll put them out several holes at a time. And the last drilling is going to be finished probably by the end of the year. It might take a little longer, maybe not. And that means assays will continue into January, possibly the end of January. So we could be reporting up to the end of January or into the first part of February on this current program.
Is there anything else happening in the meantime? Do you have to do any permitting, community consultation, anything else?
No, we've got all our surface access agreements in place. We're in good shape there. We've got a permit, so drill away.
And go out there and tell the story.
Yes.
What else what are people pushing back on with the story? Like, what's maybe something that maybe doesn't keep you up at night, but you have it in the back of your head thinking like, oh, I got to pay attention to that. And when you talk to essentially the smart money over here in Europe's financial center, what are they pushing back on?
Well, they want to know about the current political situation in Mexico, the change of government, and how that's going to look. There's discussion of a ban on open pit mining and what's going on with that. Is it going through? What do you know? So that's the feedback. People are more comfortable now with the change of government than they were a few months ago. I'd say that would be probably the main point that you get back.
How's the safety for you when you go on the ground in Mexico? Do you just fly in, you rent a truck, you go to a project, or do you have to travel with a security detail?
No security. No, it's quite safe where we're working. We've never had to do anything like that in 20 years of working in Mexico. It depends on the areas. You know, some areas are dangerous, and you stay away from those. Our projects are situated in really good areas, quite safe. We've not had issues, so quite secure down there, and have never had to have any security detail.
Right. What else? What am I forgetting to ask you here? Trying to come up with questions that are going to make me look smart, but you're talking to people that are much smarter than me. What else do you think is important to talk about here?
Well, I think the silver market. So where are we in the macro on that? And it's our belief that we've now entered a bull phase here. So we're in a bull market at very early stages. Finally saw silver break just not that long ago. When was it? In April. broke $30. That was the first time in 10 years. So now we view this as a pretty long bull coming up here. We believe it's going to go through the old highs above 50 and probably well beyond at some point. And so we've set all our projects up for that event, our current resource projects. We've updated all our reports on, but those are on hold until we get well into a silver bull market, when we're going to have a much better value on those assets. In the meanwhile, we're advancing that Columba as fast as we can, get the maiden resource out, expand on that, and update resource and PEA and get it down that path.
Okay. Updated resource PEA, is there a timeline, internal timeline that you're working on? You want to have all that drilling done by February? Is that coming 2025 later? What do you think?
For the maiden resource, yeah, it would be the end of the first quarter of 25.
Okay, that makes sense. And then on the back of that, you see if it's PEA, depending on what?
Yeah, well, yeah, then there'd be more drilling,
Okay.
expand on the resource, and then start doing work that you need for a PEA.
Right.
And then depending on your results and the size of your deposit, then you're deciding when to pull the trigger on that.
You know, there's kind of a running joke online that the junior mining companies are only leveraged to the metals to the downside. So when the metals go up, the juniors stay flat. When the metals go down, the juniors also go down. Do you think there's something structurally wrong with the Canadian capital markets? That's something I've heard throughout this whole show a lot. Do you think that's true?
No. Well, there are lots of things wrong with the capital markets in general. It's changed a lot over the last 20 years. Gone into mostly managed money now and institutional. You lost a lot of the retail, you lost a lot of the brokers, which is really hard on early stage startup companies that were able to access capital that way. So, that'd be something that'd be great to see come back into the sector. But in general, as a market, sort of a market cycle, it's not that different from what we've seen before. You get the metals moving. What's different so far is that the mining companies always move to the upside first, and then it trickles down to the grassroots juniors eventually, and we're not there yet. But there still is a disconnect with the mining companies, even though many of them had pretty good runs here in the last 6-7 months. They still haven't gone to where they ought to be with record gold prices, and they will. It just takes time.
Well, Jim, this is your last meeting for the day as far as I understand it, so I assume you want to get out of here. Thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully speak soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking again with you.
All right, Mike, you've come all the way from Brazil to Europe to do marketing, but why? What are you hoping to achieve? Why are you at this specific conference?
Well, I haven't really been in Europe for over a year now, Antonio. It's always good to get to see the shareholders. We've got a good shareholder base in Europe. And so I've been through Munich and Frankfurt to talk to my shareholders, some new guys there as well, and to tell them about our evolving porphyry district in Cajueiro. I think this is the exciting news that we have in the company, that we've been drilling Maria Bonita, our new discovery, for a year and a half, 2 years now. We've drilled 5,000 meters into that. We've shown that this really is Brazil's first gold porphyry, and that we have something which will turn into a new and exciting add-on resource to our 700,000 ounce central area. And also we've had Dr. Richard Silito out on the project in July, and he said, Mike, this is a fantastic new porphyry. It's Brazil's first only gold porphyry. And what you should be looking for are clusters or alignments of porphyries in your area, because in that central area you have 17 kilometers of gold-bearing streams in there, which probably will show up other porphyry sources. And so that's exactly what we've been doing over the last 3-4 months. We've been looking for new porphyries, and, Antonio, we found another 2. Apart from Maria Bonita, we found Mombaki, which is 1.6 kilometers to the east of Maria Bonita. The same sort of rocks on surface, with the quartz veining, with the red rock, with golden soils, and with a very, very intriguing magnetic high anomaly at 500 meters depth. And if I reflect on what our second consultant that we took out to the property in August, a guy called Eugenio Espada, he said, look, once you start seeing all these gold porphyry stocks, you should be looking for porphyry 0, the mothership of the porphyry, the rock that actually is the source of all of this. And so we will be looking not just at the surface material in Mombaki, it'll be a new drill target, obviously, for the company, but we'll also be thinking about what could well be below that.
Now, when I want to go back to me asking you, what are you doing here on my side of the pond, which used to be your side of the pond too, but you've kind of switched on us. That's a different topic, though. How do you determine the ROI in these things? I mean, Euro trips are not cheap. So when you come here to market, what are you hoping to get out of it specifically, and how do you know it was worth your time and money?
Well, so first, this was our first year in Beaver Creek this year. Beaver Creek is sort of twinned, if you like, with this conference here. And so we did a very big show and tell in Beaver Creek, over 66 presentations. And as I say, I like to keep the shareholders informed about what we're doing. We've got a very, very exciting project, growing from a gold project to a gold district. And I think that's the importance of what we're doing. You know, you have to be obviously show people that you're spending their shareholders' money in the right place, and that's what we've been doing.
You also put out some news, I think, 2 weeks ago, a little bit less than 2 weeks ago now. Market's reaction muted. Not much is happening, although it was good news. So how do you change that disconnect? What is it that you can do to actually reflect the value that you've been building in the share price?
Well, perhaps we haven't shown, people are obviously looking for drill results. We don't have any more drill results right now. But what we will have very shortly are surface rock sample results. And so I haven't even talked about what you're referring to now. It's porphyry number 3, which was Espiro. So we're building this thing up week by week, month by month, and showing the world that we have multiple porphyries in our project. And the importance of those multiple porphyries is that every single one of those will give us an increment to our resource. And so I think that's what will really open the eyes of the major mining companies to a project which wasn't just a small gold project in maybe a not really important gold district, as Alta Floresta sometimes is referred to as, but this is going to open up the eyes of the porphyry world to something brand new on the planet.
Exploring one porphyry is not cheap. Exploring 3 porphyries is 3 times not cheap. How do you crack that nut? Well, so the way I look at it is this. If this was a young porphyry and we were a junior company looking for young porphyries, we'd probably have to drill down hundreds of meters before we even hit that porphyry. These rocks are 1.8 billion years old. So as a result of that, some of the cover has actually been eroded away. So if I look at Maria Bonita was on surface, and so from surface down to 220 meters is what we've drilled so far. We have mineralization, and we will continue to drill that particular deposit down further in the coming year. Mombaki has a cover of 30 meters of younger rocks on surface, and so the drilling isn't that expensive in terms of actually finding that porphyry. And Espiro, it also seems to be on surface. We've done the geophysics there. It looks very, very, very similar to our Maria Bonita discovery. And so the drilling, drilling's always expensive. It costs about $300 a meter in our part of the world, all in. But, in terms of actually finding the porphyry, we've got them on surface. So we've got an added bonus there. Well, but porphyry source that's deeper, how deep would you think that is?
Well, so the geophysics we've done right now, we've used our airborne magnetic data. We've had that reinterpreted by experts from other parts of the world. They have taken a slice down at 500 meters and a slice at 200 meters. At 200 meters, you can just see the magnetic high appearing. And at 500 meters, it's 1.4 kilometers across. So, let's say we start drilling Mombaki. We go down to 250 meters. We start seeing something different. That's when we will consider where we drill deeper holes.
So how much money do you have right now? Because you're saying, well, 300 a meter, you want to go 250, so that's costing you a little over $500,000 a hole. How much money do you have right now? How many holes can you drill?
So we have got about just under 2 million right now. We'll do the first drilling, obviously, probably on Maria Bonita first, where we need to drill a hole 300 meters deep, below the one we've already drilled. I think, what we will need for 2025 is another 5 million to actually get our teeth into these 3 porphyries.
Okay. When do you think the right time is to raise that money? Because it's summer, or it's going to be summer now in Brazil, so you can start getting more active now. So what, you're looking to raise money anytime soon?
Well, where we are in Brazil, it doesn't make any difference. All year round is exploration time. So we have got fantastic infrastructure, hydroelectric plants. You can walk in and out of the project whenever you want to, whether it's the rainy season or the dry season. So in that particular, in those terms, there's no problem at all. Raise the money. The question is, if perhaps we do a bit more drilling, maybe we hit something big and we change the stock price. It's a balancing act, unfortunately, for juniors, and we don't want to dilute the company too much. But we know we live on what we explore for, so we've got to raise some more cash sometime.
Would the strategy or the idea be to raise capital with known shareholders, or are you hoping to get maybe a strategic in, get some more funds? What's kind of the target share structure that you want to create here?
I'd be happy to have another cornerstone shareholder in the company. Certainly, I'd be happy to have that. We've only sort of mentioned the idea to Crescat, but Crescat's very, very supportive of what we're doing. And obviously, Quinten Henning was the guy who saw our project in 2021, saw the potential, and is very happy that that is now being realized.
Yeah. Well, from here on out, you have drill targets, you can go and drill, you have the money to go and drill. What's going to be the next news release from here on out, and when do you think it's going to come?
The next news release is going to be on the surface samples that we're taking on Monbaki, on Espiro, and on a couple of new targets that we have in the pipeline.
Yeah. When do you think that's going to come?
Probably before Christmas.
Right. Well, because that's the thing that I wanted to ask you, is that we're going into tax loss season. People out there are kind of worried, like, oh, if my stock has a slight decline, maybe it's a candidate for being sold down on tax loss. So is there something that you can do to combat that? And that actually reminds me of another question I wanted to ask you, Mike, is what do you think is the biggest problem with our sector right now? I mean, we're seeing a whole lot of companies putting out decent results, good results, no reflection in the stock price. What do you think is really the issue with our space?
I think there's a lot of people obviously playing Russian roulette here, and not looking at the geological potential of the projects. The majors are making a huge amount of money right now, producing gold in a fantastic gold market. And what will happen is that is where we hope to get the cornerstone investor. I believe that any junior company is only as valuable as its projects. So, I'm very happy. I can sleep at night because we haven't just got one, we've got 3 projects in our portfolio. And I believe in that particular respect, we're second to none.
Well, when do you think the right time would be for M&A on your side, where you're potentially being acquired? What do you have to get it to an MRE? Can it happen before that? Can it happen even before that?
Well, I don't think we haven't realized really the value of Cajueiro yet. I think once we get to the end of 2025, if we can show we're not just a 700,000 ounce project, but we are getting on for a much larger project, and we can actually release a resource by the end of 2025, which adds on to our 700,000 ounces, I think that will give us a big kick in the stock price.
What are we looking at?
Well, so here we've got a most beautiful looking porphyry rocks. These porphyry rocks, first of all, if we look at the first picture here on the left-hand side, the little round quartz eyes in there are the texture of the red gold-bearing porphyry. And these veins, you can see right through all of the rock, are the quartz veins. This is the top of the system. They're very, very curvy quartz veins. They're called UST structures. And this shows us that when I first went there in 2006, I thought, has it all been eroded? or is it still there? And now we know it's still here. Maria Bonita was number 1, Mombakin was number 2, Espiro is number 3. Keep on looking at Altamira Gold for the next ones that we're going to announce.
All right, and that's Mike Bennett of Altamira Gold Corp. Thank you so much for doing this, sir.
Thank you very much, Antonio.
All right, I'm standing here with John Miniotis of AbraSilver. Sir, you've come all across the pond. Why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of this? You want your stock price to go up? Or are you looking for strategics, big investors? What do you really want to achieve out of this conference?
Yeah, so this, I would say, for us is one of the premier mining conferences in Europe. So it's very important that we attend. So for this conference, it's extremely well run, very, very efficient. I have already 30 meetings plus in the next 2 days, today and tomorrow. So extremely busy schedule. And for us, I mean, we're not looking to raise money, so we're in a very comfortable position. But it's really letting investors know, so existing investors and new prospective investors, getting our story out there, letting them know all the key catalysts that we've already been able to announce this year. And then very importantly for us, we have a large number of upcoming milestones as well. And so, raising awareness, saying, look, if you're looking to invest in gold and silver, you should really have a look at AbraSilver. We have a very, very compelling story. And so, yeah, this is a great use of time, extremely efficient conference. You get to meet quite a few people, also networking, sort of in between meetings as well. So it's a very, very valuable conference for us, and it's just a way to make sure that people are seeing sort of the progress that we're making at site, at Diablilos, and looking forward to some of the key milestones that are coming up pretty soon here.
What is the story of AbraSilver? And that kind of sounds funny coming from me because we've been talking for a couple of years. I know the story from one angle, but what are investors here asking? What are they getting excited on? Because your stock price is up, 60, 70% this year alone, year to date, I think. So it's doing well, but is it kind of a silver beta? Is it something specific with the story? What are people really asking about?
Yeah, no, so it really is 100% precious metal focus, so it's primary silver, but with a large gold component as well. And so, yeah, we have large beta to silver prices and also to gold prices, which is obviously ideal in this rising commodity price environment where you're seeing both silver and gold doing very, very well. I'd say we stand out on a number of fronts. I mean, one, we have a very, very robust resource already. But the fact that there's still significant exploration upside potential really stands out. I'd say when you look at the drill results across the industry on a consistent basis, I mean, we consistently rank very, very high with some of the silver intercepts that we announce on a grade thickness basis. So we're finding new resources, continuing to step out, drilling, and hitting wide intercepts of very, very good grades. And so I say we stand out on that side. Extremely lean, efficient team. We run very, very, financially disciplined company, I would say. And so we're extremely lean for a market cap of our size, running this very, very efficiently. And you see that in terms of the rate of return on our exploration dollars. And so again, when you look past our track record over the last 4 years or so, basically for every 12 cents we've spent on exploration, we've been able to add an ounce of silver in the ground. And so, we want to make sure we're getting recognition for all the value that we've been delivering for shareholders. And I think what's really standing out now for investors is the fact that Argentina has made a very, very significant positive shift here in terms of the federal government there. Really welcoming foreign investment, or investment in general, including foreign investment and domestic investment, of course. And they've introduced new legislation to really encourage large-scale investment in the country. And so Diablilos is in a prime opportunity to benefit from that.
Last time we spoke, I believe, must have been at Rick Rule's conference. This is Europe, though, so a different investor profile, if you will. What are some of the tough questions that people ask? I know Europeans can be very to the point and sharp with the questioning, so what are the tough things people ask you?
Yeah, look, I think when you look at our story, historically, it's always been around Argentina where there's been question marks. And so that's really radically changed over the last 12 months since President Milei coming in. You're seeing large, blue chip companies invest in Argentina directly, whether it's BHP and Lundin Mining, invest in Filo. You're seeing Rio Tinto invest aggressively on the lithium side in Argentina, and other large majors as well. And so you're seeing a shift where large companies are clearly now comfortable enough to invest billions of dollars into the country. that gives investors comfort. For some investors, I'd say Argentina is still, they're taking a wait and see approach and saying, look, we got to give it a few more years, and that's fine. It depends on everyone's risk tolerance. And so I think for us, our project is extremely solid. Again, we have a robust resource already, plus additional growth potential. The capex is manageable, permitting straightforward in Salta. So this is a project that's clearly moving forward. I think Argentina as well. We feel very, very confident now under this new regime. There's significant incentives of moving this project forward. And so we're not really getting many tough questions at all. I think the tough questions come closer to when you need to do a financing and, a level of dilution. We did a $20 million strategic financing earlier this year through Kinross and Central Puerto, which is a large utility company in Argentina. We raised that money. They're very long-term oriented shareholders, and we raised that at a premium to the share price at that time with no warrants. So it was very, very friendly for our existing investors. And so, I think right now, not getting many tough questions, but clearly, we just need to stay focused, deliver all these upcoming milestones, and then make sure our investors get rewarded as we continue to de-risk this project forward.
I do want to talk about those milestones, because what is it that you can do to kind of decouple here from silver and let's call it precious metals beta, because gold and silver have both done well this year. Year to date, they're like 50% up or something like that. You're 60, so that's not yet the torque that people hope when they go into risky mining investments, right? So what are you doing to kind of decouple and offer that upside torque?
As an exploration company, what investors are clearly looking for is a successful track record of good exploration success. And I think that's clearly what we're delivering here. And so for us, it's additional drilling, which we're doing. We have a 20,000 meter drill campaign underway, coming out with regular, timely announcements every 3 to 4 weeks or so on average, coming out with updates on that program as we get back results from the lab. And I think that's how you can really drive the share price higher, is showing that, look, there's still significant growth potential not being valued by existing analysts and most shareholders. And so even beyond the pre-feasibility study that we announced earlier this year, there's clearly significant growth potential, and our job is to unlock that as efficiently as possible. The other thing that we're doing is we're actually updating the pre-feasibility study to reflect the recent positive changes that have been announced in Argentina. And so that resource or pre-feasibility study update is going to come out before year end this year, so sometime approximately within the next 3 to 4 weeks here. And that's going to show sort of the impact that the reduced tax rates have had. The elimination of export duties are very, very significant. And so quantifying that is very important. We're coming out with a full technical report again and a whole updated pre-feasibility study. And again, that's just going to show that this is an extremely robust project and continuing to grow. And so I think as you deliver, resource growth, as you deliver, clear, quantifiable economics in the forms of pre-feasibility and feasibility studies, as you get permits in place, you're clearly de-risking a project, moving it forward towards that construction decision stage. And I think that's when you're ultimately going to get significant value over and above sort of just rising gold and silver prices.
What is that impact going to be? And don't tell me wait and see, but are you guiding something in terms of what that impact is going to be on the numbers here?
Yeah, so in our corporate presentation, we've ran the numbers where it's the decrease on just the tax rate alone, going from 35% to 25%, impacted the net present value by about $150 million US, 150. So very, very significant. There was a similar impact in terms of the elimination of the export duties as well, around about $150 million US for that. And so those changes alone are, you're talking about a $300 million impact there to the free cash flow. And there's some other optimization, scenarios that we've incorporated now into the new mine plan, and those are very, very significant as well. So we're looking for a significant impact. Again, you can't, until it's finalized and obviously ready to be announced. I don't have the specific figures, but we're talking about several $100 million improvement in the economics here of this project. So it's extremely, extremely significant.
You said you don't have to raise capital. You raised $20 million earlier this year. year, but now you have this updated study that you're doing more drilling on the back of that. How much money do you have left right now out of that 20, and how much are you going to spend on all these things?
Yeah. So as of today, we have approximately 15 million Canadian still left. So very, very strong, solid financial position. In terms of the 20,000 meter drill campaign, we've drilled already 12,000 of that. So there's another 8,000 meters or so left to be drilled. So let's say about $4 million left to be spent on drilling. And the study has been already largely paid for, so that's already been maybe a couple $100,000 left to finalize that study. So I'd say until next year, we have very, very strong cash position. And of course, next year we'll decide on, do we continue to drill? Is there going to be a phase 5 exploration program? But it's really dependent on the results that we get from the current campaign.
Right, so updated feasibility study before the end of the year. Let's just kind of recap the catalyst here. Updated feasibility study before the end of the year. Then you're going to have continued drill results coming out. What else? What's kind of the chronology of all that?
Yep. So the updated pre-feasibility study is a big catalyst. The updated drill results, both from Oculto and Jack, and the step-out holes that we're focused on. Those are looking for oxides, gold and silver. We're also now drilling a copper porphyry complex that we have at Diablilos at the same project. There's a potential for a large copper porphyry discovery, and we're drilling those holes right now. We expect to get those probably sometime in January or so, depending on the turnaround time from the lab. But those are deeper holes that we're drilling at the moment, looking for sulfides. And so, yeah, I'd say in terms of our key catalysts, we have the updated economics. We have ongoing drill results every few weeks. Early next year, we'll get a sense of these initial porphyry holes, and that could represent, another very, very exciting leg to our story. And then we also have this La Cuepita project. That's in the San Juan province of Argentina. There we've partnered with Teck Resources, and Teck Resources will likely recommence drilling there in January, so early in the new year, and then later on next year, we should be able to announce some of those results. And so we have lots going on. And then at the same time, of course, de-risking this, we submitted the EIA application and regular dialogue with the communities and provincial government, and we expect to have a positive decision made there before the end of 2025.
You're mentioning tech, and you're kind of reminding me of this, John. I know I ask it, it's probably every time we speak, but any update on the M&A front? Are people coming to you, asking questions, signing CAs? What's happening?
Yeah, we've been busy. So I've been wearing many hats on the IR side, on the corp dev side. I mean, busy on all fronts, all around. And so, yeah, I'd say we have quite a few CAs underway. There's always people looking, and so with the confidentiality agreements, I think things are progressing very, very well, and so obviously can't talk too much specifics there, but we're not looking to sell this company at this stage. I think we feel we're extremely undervalued. The project has, even within the next 12 months, a number of very, very important milestones that we'd like to deliver on, and then we think that could clearly result in a significant re-rate for our shareholders. So that's not our focus, but we do have an active data room in process, and obviously people looking. But our focus is on delivering on the exploration side and continue to de-risk, and so that's really where we're really focused. And then at the right time, who knows where those discussions will ultimately end up. But we're trying to save that for a later date.
And at the right time probably mostly means at the right price. What is that? What if I come to you tomorrow and say, John, apparently I'm an heir to some oil money. I've got endless money. Just name a price, I'm paying it. How much do you want from me?
Sure. Yeah, so it's all relative, as you know. It really depends. If you were to ask me 2 years ago when silver price was at $22 and gold still was under $2,000 or so, obviously the price level now has changed as we've de-risked, and obviously gold and silver has moved higher, and we're still, now we found the Jack deposit, and so there's no specific price point. But we look at ourselves on a price to NAV basis relative to the peers, not only the current, the peers that are actively traded, but also on some recent M&A transactions as well. And so you've seen some Silvercrest being acquired at a very, very healthy price. It's great for their shareholders, over $1 billion US. As well, Gato Silver recently being acquired as well. Again, another $1 billion plus transaction on the silver side. We see ourselves as having a very, very scarce primary silver project that could be brought into production here in the very near future. And so, you know, when we look at our price to NAV versus some of these multiples, right now it doesn't line up. So I'd say it'd have to be a very, very high premium compared to the current share price. But obviously, as we unlock value and the share price naturally, we think are poised to rise here. Maybe at a later stage, again, at the right price, we can have those specific discussions. And, you know, I think it's up to the board and ultimately up to shareholders. Ultimately, obviously, shareholders have to approve any large M&A transactions. And so the shareholders will have the ultimate voice, the ultimate vote. But yeah, our job is just to continue to make sure that we're not being acquired down the road at a huge discount to the net present value of our project.
Yeah. I know you have to run now, get caffeinated before the next meeting, which is undoubtedly more important than me. But what am I forgetting to ask you here? What else should we be talking about?
No, you always do a great job. Always appreciate the opportunity to providing you and your viewers with an update. I think we covered all the key catalysts coming up. I think for us here, obviously it's been an exciting time already, but it's very important that investors are looking out for some of these upcoming milestones here. I think we covered everything and really appreciate the time.
And that's John Miniatis of AbraSilver. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right, I'm standing here with John Black of Regulus. Sir, why are you here? What are you hoping to achieve? Is it volume that you want? Do you want to move your share price? Are you looking for strategics? Why come all the way to Europe?
Well, what we're finding is that Europe has a lot of investors that are very interested in investing in large copper discoveries. They're realizing the importance of copper to move towards a lower carbon future. And so we've found over the last several years that we're getting much more interest out of Europe from retail investors, high net worth individuals, some funds as well. So we're here to continue to show our story. We have a story that's relatively well known right now, but one that doesn't have a lot of news flow to it. So we're particularly looking for sophisticated investors that realize the scarcity of these large copper deposits like we have and realize the importance of putting your hands on one at the stage we're at right now.
You did mention that you haven't had too much of a news flow. You did have, I believe since last time we spoke, which was at Rick Rule's conference, you did have a piece of news. What else are you doing in the meantime? Because, you're obviously not staying still. You have some news and you're active in the background, but what are you doing?
Well, probably to help people understand where we're at with this project, what we have is we have a portion of a large copper-gold sulfide deposit. The other portion of the deposit is held by our neighbors, who are currently operating an oxide gold mine, which is pre-stripping the top off of this large copper-gold sulfide deposits that's shared between us and them. But because of the complex land situation in the neighborhood, it means that it's hard for either one of us to fully show what we have on it. And some companies that can invest a large amount of time can go under confidentiality with both parties and assemble the district, but the public and many other potential acquirers can't see that. So a very important piece of news that we put out in July of this year is we've reached an agreement with the joint venture that operates the Tetuatai mine next door to us to work together to produce a consolidated resource estimate for the full district. This will be done under confidential terms, so for us to be able to present that public will require mutual agreement. But we're in advanced stages now of producing that resource estimate. If we both agree, we'll move to a PEA on it. And that will, as a minimum, allow us to better understand between ourselves and the joint venture next door what we have and who has what portion of it. It'll also most likely allow us to present that to interested parties moving forward, and then ideally we would love to be able to release to the public, but we'll have to have that mutual agreement when we get to that stage. But it's a very critical step in the development of the district, and it shows the collaboration between ourselves and the neighbors to evaluate how to best position this project to be developed into a large mine going forward.
So how long before you have that, and then how long before you can actually release the PEA?
Releasing it will be dependent on both parties agreeing to it.
Yeah.
So I can't guarantee that we can put that out. We view it as 3 stages of benefits to this agreement. The first is that between ourselves and the neighbors, we know who has what portion of it. And keep in mind, the neighbors, it's a joint venture called Comalaichi, but it actually consists of 3 companies. Southern Copper, which is Grupo Mexico's Peruvian subsidiary. Buenaventura, the large Peruvian precious metals company, and a company called Espro. So 3 companies that are very different in size and strategy form that joint venture, plus ourselves. So it's really 4 owners of this large deposit moving forward. And so the first stage of this work will allow us to better understand amongst ourselves who has what portion of it. That facilitates discussions on how consolidation may happen in the future. The second stage, if Comalaiche, the joint venture next door, is in agreement with us, would allow us to present this information to interested parties, the large companies that are evaluating potential acquisition of some or most of the project in a consolidated sense. And the third stage would be able to put it out to the public, which we would love to get to. I think it would pop some eyes if we could show the full potential of this project. But that's contingent upon the joint venture agreeing with us that it makes sense. We think it makes a lot of sense. We'll cross that bridge sometime next year when we get to that point.
Well, but this is essentially, and tell me off if I'm out of line, but when I first learned about the story, I thought like, okay, this is a takeout story. Like they have to resolve whatever's happening with the neighbors. Once it's resolved, it's getting taken out because the asset works.
Yep.
All the science is out there on Setter Plus. People can go and look at all that, but it just works. So is this the most critical step in your company's existence, essentially, getting this PEA out, getting that agreement with you and the joint venture partners, and then on the back of that, essentially you get taken out before long? That's kind of how I look at it. Am I out of line here? Does that make sense?
That's very much the way we view it. And but it's there's obvious and there's when it actually happens, and it always takes a little bit. But keep in mind, one of the critical drivers on this project is that the oxide mine, where they're producing the gold from leaching the oxide cap of the deposit, only has a few years left. And so when that mine stops, it's in everyone's interest to be in a position to make the transition to a larger copper gold sulfide mine.
Okay.
You want to avoid remediation or closure of the mine. You want to avoid layoffs of local and people working in the mine and service providers. It's a beautiful setup to make a transition from a pretty decent gold mine into a very attractive large copper gold sulfide mine that would have 40, 50, 60 years of mine life, what we call a multi-generational mine. So it's very important for all of us as owners in the district, ourselves and the 3 parties that form the joint venture next door, but also all other stakeholders, all people that live in the area. It's important that we collaboratively work together to make a transition to the new, larger mine. It would benefit everyone. So easy to see, easy, kind of a logical conclusion. A lot of details. It's always complicated when you have so many parties in a district, but I'm quite confident we'll reach that relatively soon.
You should come sit on my couch, because from my couch everything looks easy. When do they run out of ore?
They can go to about 2028 right now is the current projection.
How long would it take to build a mine on your deposit?
For the size of project we see, right now we have a little over 500 million tons of mineralization of quite attractive grade on our property. The neighbors report about 800 million tons at a similar grade, so approximately a 0.7 copper equivalent grade with a very low strip ratio, and we both substantially underreport. So the combined public disclosure for the full district, our side and the neighbor side, is over 13 billion pounds of copper, over nearly 10 million ounces of gold as a byproduct. So it's already a large deposit, and we both substantially underreport. So it's the type of a deposit that would support a very large mine, that is something similar to, say, an Altamira or Toromocho or Las Bambas, that scale of project moving forward. But that requires a lot of capital. So that really means this is the type of project that, in my opinion, would be best in the hands of 1 or 2 major companies that have the sufficient capital to properly develop the mine at the scale that gives the best return on the project.
BHP, Rio Tinto, that kind of size, I suppose.
Those amongst others, and keep in mind the gold companies are increasingly interested in these large copper deposits with significant gold as well. So there are quite a few interested parties out there.
Yeah.
We part of this consolidation effort that we're working with is to make it so it's easier for groups to see that full potential without having to go into multiple confidentiality agreements and assembling data sets to put together.
Right.
If we do that for them, it makes it easier for interested parties to evaluate this.
Well, but to go back to how long it would take to actually build the mine, you don't have to be specific, but kind of give me a range, because so they run out of ore 2028. This thing is not built in 6 months, right? It's
No,
going to take time.
typically this would be 4 or 5 years to build a mine of this, with all the feasibility work that needs to go into it and everything. But you're maintaining employment while you're doing that, and you have things going forward. So that work really needs to start in the next couple of years to avoid having a gap in the operation of the project moving forward. The oxide mine can always extend for a little bit longer, so you can keep permits in place moving forward. But what you want to avoid is a dropout employment in the area. You want to have that line of sight to what the new mine will look like moving forward. And that puts this project in a rather unique situation, because there are a number of other large undeveloped copper deposits or copper gold deposits out there, but most of those would be on the time frame of 8 or 10 years to being into production. A brownfield situation like this, even though 4 to 5 years sounds like a long time, that's quite short in the space for the development of very large copper mines.
How much money do you have right now? Do you have enough money to bridge that gap between now and a couple of years from now?
Yeah, we have about $14 million Canadian right now, which is pretty good treasury, and we're not drilling. We've largely defined the mineralization on our property that's still open. We could find more to the north, but when we look at it, it would be in year 40 or 50 of the mine life, so it doesn't particularly change the net present value of the project moving forward. So we're in a position we may not need to finance again on the project. Certain situations could come up where we could acquire additional lands or something like that might require some financing, but we may not have to prior to a consolidation. There are many different ways the project could be consolidated, and some of those could require us actually being more aggressive in acquiring one of our neighbors or something like that moving forward. So there are possibilities that would require additional financing for us, but it's not a necessity at this point. There's no imminent financing in our future.
So money's not keeping you up at night. The government's not keeping you up at night. The asset works not keeping you up at night. The relationships with the neighbors are progressing well. They're not keeping you up at night. But nothing's ever perfect. Don't let my wife hear that. But nothing's ever perfect, right? What is keeping you up at night? What's the biggest challenge here for Regulus?
Our biggest challenge right now is really because of the complexity of multiple parties, is how we can set the table to make an easy pathway for a group to see how they could acquire it. It's always a big step for a major company to make a decision to acquire a project that's not yet in development stage. They're risking a lot of money to be able to put that into production relatively quickly. When you have a situation where it's not just buying one company to get to it, it might be buying several, that's a more complex step. So our biggest challenge now is simplifying that story. How can we take steps to show that full value? How can we take steps to pre-consolidate portions of the project, make it easier for a group to come in and pick our position up and move the project forward. So that's our biggest challenge is how do you get multiple pieces to align at the right time. A really critical step has happened in the last 6 months in our space. There has been quite a bit of M&A activity in the copper space over the last 2 years, but up until earlier this year, it was all buying producing assets. And that's a pretty predictable pattern. If you buy a producing asset, you know what you're getting. You don't have to put more money into it. You may choose to make it bigger, but you already have production. It's easy to value that. And those producing assets have been relatively cheap until earlier this year. But with a strong price movement upward beginning in about March of this year, it's become more expensive to buy those producing assets, and most of the obvious pieces available have been picked up. For the first time this year, we've seen the acquisition of 2 pre-development large copper deposits. Rex Minerals was taken out by a group called MAC, the Rex's project was in Australia. And then the bigger news that came out of BHP entering into the Filo and Jose Maria projects in Argentina. Those are the first 2 acquisitions of projects similar to ours. And we like to see that, because once we start to see groups moving into buying projects to be able to build them in the future, there are only a certain number of those available, and there are probably more companies looking for them than there are projects available. So we feel pretty fortunate that we have one that will draw a lot of interest. And once the ball gets rolling on that, it makes it easier for us to draw the attention, we think.
And I was just talking to Ben. Shout out to Ben Sherrington. He's your IR Can I say that?
Yeah.
And he told me that you're what the best performing copper junior over the last 12 months or something like that?
Yeah, we're up approximately 200% over the last 12 months, which is a nice run for us. And most of our peers have made pretty good runs earlier in the year, but many of them have kind of dropped back right now. So we feel quite fortunate. Some people take a look at us right now and say, boy, I wished I'd moved on you last year. You've made that nice run. But keep in mind, these are typically steps where we'll see an increase in valuation. We still feel we're quite undervalued for what the end game will be on this story moving forward. So it's nice to be appreciated, and we have, I think, smart long-term money taking a hard look at us right now. It's not likely that we'll drop off in price. So if you want to get in, you kind of need to pay the price it is right now. But there's plenty of upside on this project when it goes to the final stages.
What would you say is fair upside here? Like if I come to you tomorrow and I say, John, I'm an heir to a bunch of oil money, I've got unlimited money, how much do you want for this company?
I have to be a little cautious on on how we make statements like that from our position on it. But one thing I can point out is that just on the resource we have in hand right now, we're valued at about 2 cents per pound in the ground of copper equivalent. These type of projects have typically been acquired for 4 cents on average over the last 20 years, including one that we sold from our first company at that price. So there's quite a bit of room on that for what's known now, but we've drilled over 30,000 meters since we last put out a resource. So we substantially underreport what we have right now. So the deposit will grow in size, and that valuation will rise up towards what's a more typical acquisition price for a project like this.
I know you have to run now. You've got actually important people to meet with. What am I forgetting to ask you, though? What else is important here?
I think we've covered most of it right now. It's just great to be sitting on a project like this in an environment where copper's increasingly recognized as being essential to move towards a lower carbon future. But there aren't too many copper deposits out there that are available to be developed. And the major companies realize they need new projects. They oftentimes don't have those projects on their own books. And I think we'll start to see them increasingly look to acquire these type projects. So I think we're really kind of entering into a perfect storm for a group like ourselves to be sitting on an asset like this when copper production is recognized as being increasingly important and a large looming gap in production versus what the demand will be going forward. So we're in a great position right now on a great project in a market that's moving in the right direction.
And that's John Black of Regulus Resources. Sir, thank you so much for your time.
Great, thanks.
And I'm standing here with David Baker of Elemental Altus. Sir, why are you here? I saw you at Beaver Creek. I've been seeing you all over the place. And then it's actually two of you. What are you guys doing? What do you want to achieve at this specific conference?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, good to see you as well. And secondly, look, we're out here waving the flag for the company, also looking for new royalties as well. So we've got a mix of business development meetings as well as marketing and corporate meetings. So wearing a couple of hats this week.
How do you judge that as a company of your size? You're cash flow positive right now, to my standards, a lot of cash flow too. But how do you know this thing is worth your money? And what exactly do you get out of this that you know, oh, this was definitely worth a buck?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we always measure these conferences on a number of investors we're talking to. So, you can have a lot of meetings with, service providers or people trying to sell you things. The real value for us is always who do we meet, who can buy our stock? And so we've already had a couple of really productive meetings this morning already with high net worths or funds, some of which are already shareholders, some would like to be shareholders. So that's always the mark we're looking for. Now as well, if we're here looking for talking to other companies, because as a business we wear a couple of different hats, do you own royalties? Would you like royalty finance? Are there other things to do as well? So
Are there any deals happening at these conferences? Is it really, because you're mentioning, and I think your colleague, I saw her here, I think she's running around just basically looking for potentially deals. Does that happen at these conferences?
Oh, so many of the deals are sparked by a meeting here. So, somebody, they say, oh, actually he's got a third party royalty, or they've got a thing that they want to dispose of, or you're meeting people that you've been talking to for a very long time. So maybe it's not where the deals are finally locked in, but no, that's sort of those touch points and making sure that you're keeping in the loop with people valuable. No, it's very important for us.
Essentially, as a royalty company, you cannot afford to not be here, is what it comes down to.
Look, we've got to be very selective. You know, we time is probably our most valuable resource, and obviously we've got a marketing budget as well for these things. So we've got to be very careful about which ones we go to. But this was one of the ones that's been on the radar for us.
Well, talking about the budget, I remember, I think first time I spoke to Fred was close to the merger that kind of defined the company that it is today. G&A was really high. How's that progressed since then?
Yeah, no. So we've gone on a fairly wholesale thought and restructure about the business. So Altus did a very good job building up an exploration company and a generation company, and one of our biggest royalties, DEBA, is the direct result of that business. It was extremely successful. The board made a decision that we were going to scale that back, so we've gone from, I think, 25 global employees now down to 13. More than 100 employees across the various different assets have gone to the operators that we've vended these out to. So yeah, we are looking at material reductions in G&A, probably slightly over $6 million this year, probably slightly under $6 million next year. And as you can imagine, that just is all margin for us. That's all free cash flow for us to invest in new royalties or look at other ways to redistribute cash to shareholders. For example, a dividend could be on the cards. So.
What are you guiding for cash flow this year, 2024?
Yeah, so previous guidance on cash flow was $20 to $23 million. We have acquired a portfolio since then, so we acquired a portfolio of royalties from AlphaStream for $28 million. So some of those are cash flowing. So with our Q3 results, which will be out next Monday, that's the 18th, we will have a refresh on that guidance to incorporate that, but that's only going to be for the fourth part of the year. So I'd say in that 22 number is very achievable for the company given the acquisitions we've made, and then material growth next year, most importantly.
Why I'm asking you that is because I'm wondering, what do you do with that money, specifically within the context of your share price? Your share price is at what, 15, 16% year to date. Good, you're not down like most juniors, but gold's up 40%, silver's up 50% or something along those lines. So people want more torque. What can you do with the company to give them more torque?
Yeah, so I mean, number one, this year we've been aggressively paying down debt. So we were $30 million of debt at the start of the year. We will be debt free by the end of the year. So we have been aggressively paying down that debt, saving us more than $2 million of interest a year. Number one. Number two, then we can look to deploy that into new opportunities. But I think now's the point, and that catalyst will be that if we are a company generating $4 or $5 million of cash flow a quarter, more than $20 million of free cash flow a year, then you're looking at a precious metal royalty company trading at more than 10% free cash flow yields. Now, it's on us to deliver that. It's on the underlying asset performance and gold price being strong. But I think it's pretty unique in the junior royalty space.
And you think that cash flow in and of itself is going to get you a re-rate, or do you think you have to go and do something more specific with that cash flow that is going to get you the re-rate?
I think it's both. I mean, I think number one, at some point, either the numerator or the denominator's got to switch, right? You can't make this much cash and still trade on those yields. But the challenge of a royalty company is you're measured on what deals you do. So we've got a good problem to have. We'll have $50 million on our credit facility, so we'll be able to go and do deals without diluting our shareholders at all. And then also material cash flow. No, I think what we'll be really measured against is the ability to deploy that capital accretively for our shareholders.
Where do you put that capital? What are you looking for exactly? What are kind of the criteria for Elemental now?
Yeah, so across the board, so in the last 12, 18 months, we've done a number of different deals. So we've done very small, slightly different commodities. So we did a very small tungsten deal, but at a very, very deep discount to NAV, 0.1, 0.2. When that starts producing, that'll pay us back in 18 months. Great deal, very opportunistic, but a little away from our preferred commodity mix. We spent $10 million on a copper royalty, Arizona Sonoran's Cactus Mine, operated by a great operator that have gone from a small-scale underground mine into a much larger open pit mine. Very opportunistic. From a private equity operator, a bit further along the development curve, but real uplift available there. Or we've been looking at these portfolio deals like the one we've just announced with AlphaStream, which is a full valuation, but full exposure to producing gold, right countries, great operators, with plenty of upside on top of that.
Talk to me a little bit more about what you just said with that tungsten deal, and it's a little bit away, as you said, from your preferred commodity mix. What is the preferred commodity mix? Not now, but what is it going to be 5, 10, 15 years from now? Where do you want to take this?
Yeah, gold's important to us, and gold's always been important to us, like historically, and I think this premium has has contracted a little bit, but the gold royalty companies have always traded at a premium to the more diversified miners. I guess intuitively that makes sense because you're not as exposed to cyclical commodities as much, and recent gold performance shows you why you should have a fair amount of your portfolio in gold investments. So gold's important to us. We don't need to be exclusively gold. We're about 30% copper and sort of 5% other at the moment. We look at everything. It's all very returns driven, but to get us to deviate away from that real gold and copper focus, it would have to be an incredible deal, like the tungsten deal that we just found, for example.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with this, because there are so many of these assets that are very large rutile deposits. Tungsten. Think about these commodities that maybe they're not sexy, maybe they're not easy to promote when you go out there and be like, oh, we're a gold royalty company cash flowing, endless amounts of money. But they're good deals. They're cheap deals to be had in those commodities. So is that something you will actively keep looking at?
Well, yeah, I say we'll look at everything, and I think sometimes those extremely long life assets and maybe more industrial commodities are actually quite suited to a royalty. They look a bit more like an annuity rather than a short-term investment, right? So royalty and royalty finance should work for them. Look, I think some of these are sometimes a bit easier. They feel a bit easier than they actually are. You got to get really comfortable in the metallurgy, the product, the market. There's just more to take into account, and fundamentally, that's just going to affect what we can pay for that, and just what risk valuation we need to get to our threshold to deliver value for shareholders. If it's a gold project in Western Australia, it's going to be a different proposition.
I know we've got places to be and hands to shake, so maybe one last thing. You see our space from a completely different angle than maybe I as a retail investor would see. What do you think is the biggest issue? What's the biggest challenge for our space right now?
I think it's just attention. And now you can't be a small gold company complaining about not getting attention. There are a lot of us out there. But look, at some point, as you say, gold moves 40%. We are going to be making so much money. And at some point, people have got to realise and understand our space that a significant amount of your investment and where it should be gold linked.
What else? What am I forgetting to ask you here? I know you actually have to run now, but what's the last thing? What do you want to convey?
No, I think now is just a really interesting point in the company. Like, I know we have been saying this, but now that we've fully disposed of the exploration generation business, we've turned that business into serious value for the company. We're making acquisitions. We've got pure exposure to the gold price. I think now is really the pivotal point in terms of proper cash generation, asset performance, and organic growth through 2026 without doing anything. And the guys are busy here trying to find the next big thing. So
that's David Baker of Elemental Altus Royalties. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm standing here with Jason Jessup of Magna Mining. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you're one of the very few companies here that have seen their stock go up as much as you did. You're up, 160%, I think, year to date, something like that. You just did a big financing. And I want to talk about all these things, and I want to talk about how you take it to the next level from here on out, because your market cap is high as is, maybe though not representing the full value of the company. So lots to touch upon there, but just first of all, what are you even doing here? I mean, again, your stock price is going up. You have a lot of money. What are you hoping to get out of this conference?
Yeah, we have, I think we have a lot to talk about, and really what I want to get out is just get the word out on Magna to a broader audience. In the past, I think we focused a lot of our marketing in North America, and I think especially in Canada, we're starting to gain a lot of traction and people know who Magna is. But in Europe, we haven't done enough marketing. That's my opinion, and so we're over here meeting some new investors who haven't heard the Magna story. And I think with a larger market cap, with a clear pathway to being a producer once we close the KGHM acquisition, it's really, I guess, turned attention to us from different investors that may not have been as interested before. So yeah, hoping to meet a lot of new investors and just tell our story.
And so the idea for you is to build the share registry with a little bit more European investors. Are you specifically targeting professional investors or institutions, or who are you talking to?
Yeah, I think both. We're definitely think it's important to have a retail investor community supporting our stock. They're the ones that are typically buying and trading in the market on a regular basis and giving us a lot of liquidity. But we've also, met with some funds that are happy to buy in the market. And as you mentioned, we just closed the financing. We're not looking to raise money. So, but talking to institutional investors who have the ability to buy in the market, it allows liquidity, and it has, I think, had a positive reaction in our stock.
I do want to go back to talking about that stock price move, more specifically why it's happened. I understand the underlying work that you're doing. You've been very professional about this, which unfortunately, is a rarity in our space, and it shouldn't be. But what do you think the other guys are missing that, I'm talking to here or talking elsewhere, where the underlying metal has gone up 50, 60%, their stock maybe 10, 15%. What are they missing? What are you doing that's better? And it's kind of the other way around for you.
Yeah, and that's a tough question to answer, and I don't know specifically what any company's not doing, but I can speak from experience that Magna was in that boat at one time, and when nickel prices were skyrocketing in 2022, we were seeing valuations with just our Shakespeare project at that time, of a $20 million market cap, a much smaller company than where we sit today, and we didn't have that torque. I think we've got to a certain size right now with our Crane Hill acquisition and how far we've advanced that project, and now with the announcement of this KGHM acquisition bringing another 8 properties, the resources that come with that and what we currently have in the ground in situ upon closing this acquisition, I think it's given us that critical mass that people really pay attention now. As well, we have continually executed on what we said we were going to do. So I think we've developed trust in the investor community, and I think we still are going to continue to build that trust with new investors, but that means a lot. And when I talk to investors who said, I talked to you 3 years ago, you said you were going to do this, and you've done it now, and you've done it without creating a lot of dilution for the company, without having to impact negatively the shareholders or take on debt. So I think we've done things in a pragmatic way, and really this has been the goal and the strategy of the company since inception 8 years ago. So yeah, I think those are some of the reasons why we've perhaps performed better than others in our space over the last year.
What do you then say to the typical contrarian here, if you will, who looks at this and he's like, oh, this is already up 150% this year, is now a good time to step in?
Yeah, and it is. We've gone up a lot, and so I get that question all the time. But when people really understand the assets that we're acquiring, and these are not just assets we're acquiring that we can talk about without having any experience. These are assets in Sudbury that myself and many of our team, including our COO and our Senior Vice President of Exploration, have actually worked on while we were with FNX. So we made big discoveries on these properties in Sudbury. We have operated them successfully. We understand these assets inside and out. I personally ran the McCready West mine for 3 years and ran the operations at the Levack mine for another 2.5 years. I know these assets really, really well. And when I start explaining the success that we had in the past with these and how much metal could be produced when these assets are in the hands of a company where they're material and they get focus that they deserve, they get the capital that they deserve. FNX was a great success story, and the people who have invested in FNX understand it very well. So for people who aren't familiar with FNX, and when I joined FNX, it had gone from about 75 cents up to a little over $4. They made the discovery in 2005, right around the time I joined, of the Levack footwall, which we later called the Morrison deposit, and in 2010 I brought into commercial production. We went $7. So people who are saying it's already up from 75 cents at $4, I've met people that said I sold at that price, and then they made a discovery and it went to $7. And then the nickel and copper market turned up in 2006 and 7, and the share price went up to $39. So there is still a tremendous amount of upside in exploration, in growth potential. I personally believe that we can use McCready West as a producing, cash flowing company over the next 1 to 2 years to bootstrap a lot of the capital needed to bring Levack back into production, to build our Crane Hill mine, and I think looking out towards 2027, potentially bringing the Podolsky mine back into production. So by the end of 2027, there's potential, and this is a forward-looking statement, but there's potential without any significant amount of capital being raised from the markets that we could have 4 mines producing and generating revenues in Sudbury. So when people hear that, it's not hard to imagine higher share prices. And I've said this personally many times, I fully believe that we can become a multi-billion-dollar company, much like FNX was, but I think even better with just these assets in Sudbury. So that's the upside. What that looks like in a share price, I'll let the analysts figure that out, but a lot of people are excited, and I think it's been reflected over the last few weeks in our share price.
Let's talk about the money that you just raised and how you're going to use that to that goal to become that multi-billion-dollar company here, what are the immediate next steps for you?
Yeah, so the immediate next step is working with the team at McCready West. Now, we haven't closed the deal yet, but we are in discussions with the team there to put together the budget for next year and understanding how much capital is going to be needed to be invested and what a production profile is going to look like. So that's our immediate, goal, and that's not going to take a lot of capital, but it's going to provide, ideas where we're going to have those uses of proceeds. So we'll get that figured out, and then I can give a lot more clarity on how much will go to exploration, how much may go to capital investment in our projects. But we're going through that exercise right now.
And that's potentially when you're going to be able to tell me how far that money is going to get you, because you're talking about bootstrapping. Would that mean never having to raise capital again, or do you think you're going to have to do another capital raise sometime next year?
Yeah, and again, that's going to depend on how much exploration we want to do. There's a number of really exciting exploration targets out there, and so we just have to determine how many drills we want to have turning. What does that budget look like? This year, we're probably in 2024. We're going to spend between $6 and $7 million on exploration. I would guess next year we're going to want to be somewhere between 5 and 7 again, but we'll see. Maybe it's higher than that. So with that, we may want to do a raise for some flow through sometime next year, perhaps. But again, we need to do the budget and understand that.
Well, and is your G&A going to go up? Because I thought maybe if you're raising more money now, you become more active, means higher G&A. Is that the case?
Well, we are going to have higher G&A when we take on, the acquisition and the extra people. There's going to be some G&A costs associated with that. We are still building out our team, so there are some key positions sort of in the finance department and procurement department, health and safety, that we will be bringing in some professionals into the team for that. So yeah, that will add something to our G&A, but we still have our head office in Sudbury, which has relatively low rent compared to Sudbury or Vancouver, and we do really watch our G&A. Every dollar is really important to us. We still operate like, we're owners, and we are. And I'm a big shareholder. I've, started the company in 2016, and for 4 years didn't take a salary, and I have a lot of my personal wealth in the company. So we really watch those costs.
So money is not keeping you up at night. Strategy is not keeping you up at night. Share price is not keeping you up at night. What is? What's the main challenge for you? What are you mostly thinking of right now?
I am in a fortunate position where I'm really thinking about long-term strategy. How do we position ourselves to someday, maybe it's 5 years, 10 years from now, but really be enacting on a strategy that'll take us from being a junior producer into a very successful mid-tier, and then even how do we take it 10 years from now to make that leap to actually be a major producer. And this is the strategy I'm really thinking about, and that's what keeps me up at night thinking, what is the best approach to that. I think we have a great pipeline of projects for the next, call it 8 to 10 years in Sudbury. If we continue to execute like we're planning on executing, and we have those significant cash flows in the future, again, forward-looking statement, it's how do we use that to continue to grow the company, and maybe that means outside of Sudbury. So I have the fortunate position that a lot of juniors don't have, that I can look far out on our strategy, and I'm not worrying about day-to-day and week-to-week sort of issues and challenges.
We might be opening a door that leads to a very much longer conversation here, but outside of Sudbury, what do you mean by that? What are you envisioning?
Well, again, and this is just looking at, are there other jurisdictions that would fit well with the skill set and the culture that we're building at Magna that we could apply to perhaps older camps that have, again, maybe major companies that are looking to get out because they're changing their direction and strategy, and there may be an opportunity for Magna to get into. Also looking at certain other jurisdictions that have large-scale Tier 1 type exploration potential. And how do we, once we have additional cash flows and we're able to organically do exploration from cash flows, how do we start growing out that we can potentially make a Tier 1 new discovery in another jurisdiction in the future? And again, I'm talking out years from now, but these are the kind of things I'm thinking about, and how we position ourselves, because I think we have a very solid pipeline of growth ahead of us with assets we're extremely familiar with and a team that has run them before. And I have a great COO, I have a great Senior Vice President of Exploration. They can manage those departments of our company in Sudbury very efficiently, and allows me to be a CEO and talk to new investors, attract new capital, and also strategize for the future.
When you strategize for the future, you keep seeing Magna as the company doing that. Like, you're not for sale. You want to bring these assets into production. You want to keep expanding the company, and you're not necessarily looking for JV. Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah, we're definitely not looking to do JVs. There's no foreseeable future of us needing enough capital that we need to bring in a bigger partner to provide the capital and share the projects with them in a JV fashion. Now, I'm not saying we wouldn't have a strategic come in to take a 9.9 or maybe even a larger position within Magna itself, but yeah, we're not looking for JVs. Right now we have Dundee Corp as our largest shareholder with around 20% of the company, and they've been extremely supportive and participated in this last financing, and but like I say, in the future we may look for another corporate strategic, but at this time we have cash in the bank and we don't need it.
What's John telling you, by the way? What does he want you to do? And I'm talking John Goodman for people listening out of Dundee Corporation, but what is he telling you? Where does he see the company going?
John's a great supporter, a great cheerleader of the company. I think we've built a great relationship with himself and his management team where they trust what we're doing. So Jonathan's on the board, and he's definitely vocal in board meetings and has opinion, but I think he just trusts us to keep executing on the strategy we have. He wants to see McCreedy optimized. He wants to see it at sort of what we believe is the full production potential of it, and that's what we're going to do. And he's very supportive of it.
I know you got to run here. I know you're actually running around talking to actually smart people. Unlike in this case, what are they asking? What am I forgetting to ask you that you think is important and that, again, your institutional shareholders are asking here?
Well, the most common question I've gotten today from new people is, how come you didn't come talk to me before you did this financing? I would have loved to participate in it. So that's what I'm hearing a lot of. But, I honestly say I haven't got any really tough questions. Again, we are very prudent. We are owners in the company. We really act in that manner. And, I just invite other, intelligent investors to do their homework, speak to us and make up their own mind. But, I think there's lots of upside alongside where we are right now.
And that's Jason Jessup of Magna Mining. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much.
And I'm standing here with Rob Bergman of Relevant Gold Corp. Rob, I see you all over the place. I saw it at PDAC. I just literally see you at almost every conference. Why? What are you doing? What are you hoping to achieve? What are you hoping to get out of these events?
Well, I think the most critical thing when building a high-quality shareholder base is relationships and relationship management. And that's just easiest done in person. We don't do, as you know, a lot of advanced pay-to-play marketing. So our marketing strategy is rooted in building those high-quality relationships. That's why we're here in Zurich. We've got an incredible investor base over here. They're very long and strong supporters, and it pays to show up. So that's really the tactical strategy behind it. It's pretty simple.
Talk to me a little bit more about how you market and what your strategy behind that is. And I'm asking you specifically because I know you guys think about that extensively. You have guys you work with, but you're a rocks guy. You're not only a rocks guy. So you think a lot about marketing, positioning these stories out there. Talk to me about the strategy.
Yeah, definitely. So, our background, Brian and I have built a number of really successful businesses, and with that, we've had the opportunity, I guess, to test a lot of marketing opportunities prior to ever launching our Relevant Gold company. And so that gave us some experience and background. And really our strategy is rooted in kind of a trifecta. We know the importance of social media, right? It's huge draw, especially for the younger generation of investors. But I'm not going to see my dad on LinkedIn looking through videos, right? But at the same rate, it's that combination of being able to communicate your story, and that's probably the most important thing with our marketing approach. We analyze data, right? We're not just throwing money into the wind and expecting it to stick. So we look at actually the data analytics of every marketing opportunity. We do a tremendous amount of research, that, and we see what actually looks like it's going to effectuate a positive result for the stock, right? Because I don't really care about just being popular. That's not why I want to do marketing. We want to market the company so people can understand the incredible value proposition we're offering to the market, and that they can follow the story intimately, and when they're ready to come on board, they've got all the information they need at their disposal. So it's really a well-rounded approach to providing the education, the information about the stock, and growing the value for our shareholders. And so that's why we take a deep dive on the analytics of each marketing opportunity we look at.
What are some of those analytics? How do you measure? That's something I have actually been struggling with, specifically for the companies I have positions in. They ask me, hey, you're online, you know these things, what should we do? I don't always have a perfect answer, and it's also a tailored approach. Kind of some companies, some things work for some companies. How do you measure it?
So that, I'm kind of with you. One of the biggest challenges for someone like myself and our co-founder Brian is we want the data to tell us exact answers. We want when I drill something, I get precision. Marketing, unfortunately, it's always a bit blurry. So there's never a very clear analytical package, but I think the key is a lot of groups sell you on the analytics of eyeballs. This is how many eyeballs I have looking at it. And to me, I've learned very quickly that often I only need one set of eyeballs to be interested in enough, right. And that can carry 5 financings for us. So we think a lot more about it from the perspective of what is actually creating the emotional reaction, right? And that's why that's the hardest thing to measure. And we also have a very kind of robust internal marketing group. Because we have a number of successful companies, we've built an internal marketing team, and so they're constantly reviewing and presenting us on a monthly basis data analytics for everything related to our marketing approach. And so the unfortunate thing is it's not always a direct answer. So I think when people ask you that and it's hard to come up with an answer, it's because you don't usually have that direct effect. I could do this interview now and see our stock get traded at extra volume, and I might in my head think it was a result of this interview, but it could have just been someone sitting in Minnesota who was like for the first time unearthed relevant gold, and the local newspaper there, because they've covered us, and they're like, interesting. But in my brain I would attribute it to this, right? Yeah. So that's where you got to take the data with a grain of salt, but at the end of the day it's data and it is powerful. So I think it's about how you interpret the data is really where you're going to get the value out of it.
Sounds like you have an experience with that specific example there. How old are you again?
I just turned 39 2 days ago.
Okay. Well, I really hope the newer generation of leaders in the space are going to start thinking more like you are, which is quality over volume. So known well over well-known kind of thing.
Very well put.
Let's talk about the story you're telling to those investors, though, that you meet here, where you need that one person to essentially change the course of the company here. What is it that you're telling them? What are you selling them on right now? Because really the thing that they want to see is the stock price go up. So what are you going to do to make that stock price go up?
Of course. So we're going to catalyze our stock price through exploration. That's what we've always done. That's what we do incredibly well. We've been very fortunate to be able to raise money in these challenging markets over the last few years, and that's really given us this ability to systematically push our entire portfolio up the value curve in the mining life cycle. And so we're going to continue with our systematic approach, but we're now at a unique precipice, and this was all by design. We now have 17 high-grade district-scale targets across our portfolio. We've got some initial geology drill programs into a few of those with currently a 70% hit rate, which is pretty rare in orogenic systems. So the results always speak for themselves, and that will always drive the share price up. And the best results that the market wants to see is drilling. So as we look to next year, we're going to be ramping up to a much more aggressive drilling program where we're hoping to drill 5,000 to 10,000 meters into one of our best targets. And the work we've done to date has allowed us to now take this whole portfolio, and we can now look at all these targets, start to rate and rank them, and focus our dollars now moving forward. And I don't think the timing could be better for that as far as the rising gold environment we're in.
What about money? That's basically the biggest part after the rocks.
Yeah, we've got just under $1 million in the bank because we did do a drill program this year, small 1,000 meters. We also got our property fees paid up for the year, which is a big component of our G&A. It's about 70% of our overall burn. And so thankfully that's taken care of through the year. We will go back to market, raise some more capital in the future because, again, like I said, we're hoping to drill 5,000 to 10,000 meters next year at our apex target, Bradley Peak. But outside of that, we're still in a pretty comfortable cash position considering our field work is over for the season.
Multiple ways for raising capital, though, joint ventures, equity level, asset level dilution. Your group also has a unique approach to that because you own a big chunk of this company. How do you proceed forward? Like, is the idea for you to keep owning that big chunk of the company, or could you sell part of your, like, how is that going to work?
Yeah, totally. No, I'm not selling. I'm not a seller. Brian's not a seller. No one on our board of management has ever sold a share. We're buyers. We're continuing to buy in every round. We're continuing to buy in the open market. We really believe in this. So can we maintain the equity position we have? We'll see. As we need to raise more capital, it gets more and more challenging. But we continue to do that, and we continue to invest in every round. Now, our strategy has been different in the sense that in a challenging market, as a junior, you're very inclined to move towards a joint venture deal because it's non-dilutive and so on and so forth. We've specifically and deliberately avoided that because we're working on a belt scale concept. And now, only a year ago, we had half the amount of targets that we have today. And before you really understand your targets, you really shouldn't joint venture them because you don't know what's the best or what could be the best. So we're at this precipice. We're able to now review these more systematically, and in the future we can consider different deal structures. But when it comes to raising money, we've always sought equity raisings. We just brought in Kinross as a 9.9 strategic investor. Part of that was a tactical strategy, as if they like it, they'll continue to participate. That always is nice because you get that strong lead order, hopefully, out of your future financings, but also the continued credibility, validation, and support. So that's one of the things. We've built an incredible pool of sophisticated capital, Kinross, as well as New Gold, Mr. Rob McEwen. So really, really smart capital that understands the actual life cycle of exploration, what it takes to get to unlocking the big value.
Do you struggle with liquidity, though, in that case? Because you have, again, you and your partners own a huge chunk of the company, Kinross, McEwen, long-term shareholders. They're not in the market buying, selling on a week-to-week basis. So how do you solve that?
Yeah, well, you actually put a plan together and a strategy, and I'll give you an example. It was less than 8 months ago, we were trading less than 3,000 shares a day average volume. We uplisted to the venture, we got our OTCQB, and we've been doing these conferences. We've been building the relationships. Now we're averaging across both markets over 65,000 shares a day. That's a dramatic increase in liquidity. Now, sure, 65,000 shares, we're about the average junior as far as liquidity goes, but we're really just getting started on driving that up. It's been one of our corporate strategies. We've recognized it, we've put a plan in place, and we've executed, and we're seeing the result.
Yeah. How do you follow everything up chronologically? So what do you have coming up to the end of the year, and then next year, and let's go up to H1 next year.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, we've got our drilling from this year. All of the samples went to the lab, so we're expecting results hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks on that. Again, small program, really defining our vectors for following up at Lewiston. But nonetheless, it's always exciting. And in addition to that, we are looking to, basically put our permit in for Bradley Peak, the apex target, so that we can get out and start drilling that as soon as the snow clears in the spring. And so we'll be putting that plan together. And once we get all of the data back from this year, we're actually going to start to work on some advanced modeling of that. We've got a very large geophysical survey that currently we are reprocessing, doing 3D inversions of to refine our drill targets. Keeping in mind, drilling is the most expensive part of the process, but it's also the most beneficial to the company, or can be, or inversely, it could be detrimental to the company if you're not finding what you're looking for. But still, they're the most expensive dollars. And when capital is expensive to get, it's hard to go get a lot of that drilling money. Now we have all the evidence we need to really aggressively pursue that capital and focus those dollars into what we think is our best target today.
First Nations permits, everything else taken care of. You get the money, you go off drilling.
Exactly. Yep. Drilling and again, a much more robust program as we look to drill 5,000 to 10,000 meters and really push, some significant, kind of testing of the thesis, especially at Apex, where we've got 2.5 kilometers now that we've mapped in this main Apex shear zone. We've got high-grade gold, copper, zinc, lead. It's a really incredible mineralization style there, and it looks just like the Abitibi. I mean, same rocks, same type of structure. It's right in the center of a 125 square kilometer fold hinge anomaly. So it really is it's checking every box for large scale system potential, and we know the high grade's there. So yeah, we'll keep poking holes into that next year.
Seeing you running around, you're talking to actually smart people for a change, if you're not talking to me. What are people asking you when you go and talk to Europeans can be kind of sharper, as in maybe more aggressive with their questioning. What are you guys talking about? What are they asking? What do they want to know most of the time?
Yeah, I think a lot of them are, what are the next steps, right? They're seeing the thesis come together. Some of the folks that are maybe not shareholders yet, but we've touched down with them over the last few years. They follow the story. They're seeing the data stack up and the evidence get there. And so a lot of the questions are driven by, what is the next step, and when are you going to do a big drill program? Because that's really what I think the obvious thing is now, is we need to put a serious drill program into one of our best targets. Some of the other things are liquidity, right? How has your liquidity went up so much? That's a question we got, which kind of surprised me, because at 65,000 shares a day, it's still modest liquidity. But it's just a lot of questions that I think we see here. And I wouldn't say they're aggressive, they're just more direct. They're not afraid to ask you a hard question, and that's similar to your interviewing style. That's what I appreciate about it, because hard questions effecate good answers with a good group. Some of the other things that we've been asked here is market cap. You're so undervalued, right? Like Kinross just bought you at 30 cents, now you're trading at 24, 25 cents. I said, well, to me, that's a great opportunity to buy. So I think that those are just kind of some of the main questions. And then the unlocking value, what is it going to take to fully prove up this thesis, right? Because all the evidence to date has continued to support and prove the thesis. How do we now unlock that and really look at this as the Abitibi, as a belt scale thing that we might have numerous discovery opportunities in the coming years? And, the answer to that's simple. Again, drilling. That's what we're going to do.
Are they asking you about the when of it all? Like, is it a higher probability you prove up that thesis in 2025? Is it 2026? Is it even later down the road?
No, I honestly think we're right on the fulcrum, because of the amount of data and understanding we now have. You combine that also with a technical committee with Kinross as part of their strategic investment. We're tapping into some really, really smart Abitibi experts, and it helps that Kinross is looking at their Great Bear deposit, which is, again, the same type of rocks as that we're looking at in Wyoming. So that's been another beneficial thing for us. But the data and the understanding of this system has really come together. And so now we have a lot more confidence and that this actually is panning out. And we have the right amount of data to focus a big drilling program where we think we can have some positive results.
We're actually doing this on your lunch break, so I'm going to let you go and have lunch. What am I forgetting to ask you, though? What else is important to talk about?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you want high-grade, district-scale opportunities that are in one of the best jurisdictions in the world, look no further than Relevant Gold. We're supported by some of the most sophisticated capital. We're validated by one of the biggest gold miners on earth. I'm the largest shareholder myself. I'm buying every round and every day. I just leave you with that and take a look, have a look. And if you have questions, reach out. Love talking to people. Love telling them about our story and what we got going on.
Rob Bergman of Relevant Gold Corp. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Right, I'm standing here with Tim Warman of Fuerte Metals. I was about to say something else. Atacama Copper. How come the name change?
So we started out as Atacama Copper because we were focused on Chile in the Atacama and copper alone. But in February we did a merger with another company, put two companies together, and now we have a much broader focus with precious metals in Mexico, as well as a copper project in Mexico. And so we just felt that Atacama Copper wasn't really descriptive of what we were doing and what the company had become, and we liked the name Fuerte.
Fuerte, fire. Is it something
Strong.
Related to not fire?
It means strong. Yeah.
I thought it meant fire.
No.
Okay.
No,
so
Fuerte means strong in Spanish, and
strong mineralization, strong team, strong what?
Team, strong shareholders in particular.
Okay.
We've got a great shareholder registry. We've got some really good projects and a management team that's had a lot of success in the past.
Is fuego fire in Spanish?
Fuego is fire.
That's what I'm thinking. You should have called it Fuego Metals. Is that available?
It's taken. It's very hard to find a name for a company that isn't taken already.
Let's talk about what you're doing here, Tim, though. In the first place, I saw you in Beaver Creek earlier. Now you're at this Precious Metals Summit. Why? What are you hoping to achieve? Why are you marketing?
Yeah, it's primarily getting the story out, getting people familiar with the company. We put the company together in its current form in February. Beaver Creek was our first chance really to get out and market the company effectively. And now we're here, and then we're going on to another conference in London in a few days. And, we're not fundraising right now. We raised almost $13 million back in February, so we're still well funded. Really just, getting out there, telling people what we're doing, catching up with people that invested with us in previous companies and did quite well. So,
Is it? I'm kind of thinking along the lines of what are you hoping to achieve, though? Is it people that you're trying to, as in retail shareholders, you're trying to attract, or is it institutions? Are you looking for strategic deals potentially to be made here?
No, we're not looking so much for strategic deals, although we are letting people know that we're looking for projects. We've got 2 key projects, one in Chile, one in Mexico, but we're always looking to add more. And we largely put the company together because the shareholder base has people like Pierre Lassonde and Agnico Eagle and Ross Beatty's Lumina Group are all significant shareholders, and that's given us a fairly broad reach to look at projects, and they see a lot of projects coming through their doors that they can, if they feel they're appropriate for us, put us onto them or introduce us to people, and that's worked really well so far. And so that's one of the goals we have here, is just letting people know we're looking for projects, letting people know that we have some pretty strong financial backers, which is tough in this market right now. Even with gold prices where they are, it's a challenge to raise capital. We've been quite successful at that, and I think we will be in the future. And so I think that makes us an interesting group to talk to for companies that have projects that maybe can't advance them on their own. So that's one of the goals. The other one is really just getting out there, letting investors know who we are and what we're doing, because we will eventually have to raise funds again, as all Explorcos do. But when you do that, you don't want to be meeting people for the first time. You want people to know, this is what we're going to do. Then we deliver on those results, and then they can see, okay, this team knows what they're doing, and they're happy to participate at that point.
Raising capital is not only about finding the capital; it's about raising it at the right price.
Exactly.
So you need to make your share price go up. That's essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah.
How do you do that? What is it specifically that you're going to do over the next 12 months that is going to result in share price appreciation?
Yeah, so we've got a couple things that we're doing that I think are going to be quite interesting. We have in Mexico, we've got an ongoing drill program there. We're going to be doing 20,000 meters of drilling. We've done about 5,000 of that to date. So we'll be drilling right through to the middle of next year, and then we'll do a resource estimate on that project. It's called Christina. It's a Mexican epithermal vein system, primarily gold and silver. And once we get that resource out, I think people will start to get an appreciation for what that project can deliver going forward. And then, it'll still have lots of upside from there, and we'll keep drilling on that one. We may do a PEA next year, depends on what the resource shows us, or we may keep drilling to keep adding to that. Companies aren't getting a lot of value for PEAs in the market these days, so maybe it's better not to spend money on that and just keep drilling. So that's one set of kind of catalysts, I guess, over the next year. In Chile, we've just finished up some geophysical surveys on our porphyry targets down there. And interestingly, those porphyry targets are surrounded by Teck and Newmont joint venture. So we're completely surrounded on all sides by Teck and Newmont. They've got 20 billion pounds of copper and 10 million ounces of gold in reserves on 2 porphyries on either side of us. And the targets that we have look really interesting, copper, gold, molybdenum anomalies, alteration, geophysical signatures, but they've never been drilled. So one of the ideas we have is to talk to Newmont about them funding the drilling, because drilling is much more expensive in Chile than it is in Mexico, say. So we're quite happy to spend money in Mexico, but maybe it's better to spend someone else's money in the more expensive environments.
When you're talking to people here and you give them kind of the elevator pitch, 1 minute, which one of those 2 things are you pitching? Like, is this a drilling story, an exploration story, or is it soon to be PEA, soon to be developer story?
Yeah, I think it's it's really a mix of things, because I think if you're a single asset company, it can be very difficult, because if you're going to run into hitches at some point, whether it's technical, whether it's political, whether it's a couple of bad drill holes, and I think we've got 2 really good projects that can deliver news flow simultaneously, so that we're not dependent solely on one project. And then I think really just the strength of the management team and the shareholders. I mean, we've had a lot of really successful companies in the past. My partner Charlie he was the VPX at Goldcorp, and before that Glamis, 2 very successful companies. I just came off running Fiore Gold, which we sold to Caliber, and then a lot of companies like Aurelian and Dalradian and Continental Gold prior to that. So, I think it's that whole bench strength combined with the projects.
How's cash for you right now? How much of it are you spending?
Yeah, we have a fairly low burn rate other than drilling in Mexico. So we're, and Mexico is super cheap to drill. So our dollar goes a long way there. But we have about, I think it's June 30th, we had about $8 million left in the bank. So, I mean, we're still quite well funded. Our drilling program is fully funded, through to next year at least. And then, in terms of our overheads, we don't have an office. We work out of our homes. And, we only have 2 full-time employees in the company, myself and my partner Charlie. So
Right. What are people asking you when you talk to them? When you give them the elevator pitch, you try and get them re-interested in the story, or maybe tell them the news story, if you will. What are they asking? Is Mexico the first thing they're talking about? What are they concerned about?
I mean, there is some talk about, what's the political risk situation in Mexico. I think that's largely died down with the new president. I think the talk of open pit mining bans has kind of gone away, or at least died down. I think people are successfully operating there. Obviously, the security situation in Mexico is still a concern in many places there. We haven't seen a lot of impact from that, but we're obviously conscious of it. And then in Chile, there have been new mining regulations down there, so people are wondering about that. But then again, things are getting permitted in Chile. Alex Black's Rio 2 just got permitted for their construction after a bit of a hold-up. So, I think, those kind of things are I think those are largely ebbing, those kind of concerns. So.
I was already wondering why you're sporting the same look as Alex Black, but maybe it's because you want to get the permits.
It's because I was up at my farm all summer and out there by myself, and I thought, I'm just going to let the beard grow. So
You just saw an interview with Alex Black, and you're like, he looks good, and he does. Let's talk a little bit about that. You said security, you have to be cognizant of the security situation. What does that mean? Are you on the ground going around with security around you?
No, it's more, there are certain cities that are a little spicy right now. Culiacan is one of them, Mazatlan, and we just don't go there. We don't have any need to go there. We're in Chihuahua State. We are, up in the mountains in Chihuahua. There's not a lot of people around there. So, we're just careful about, where we have our staff drive through, the sort of routes they take, and be cognizant of making sure that people know we're a mining company, because generally mining companies get left alone. And especially if you've got the logo on the truck door, you don't get bothered so much. So.
Okay, so like they don't come to talk to you. It's not like in the movies they want money or something.
No. I mean, you do. You'll occasionally talk to people who are adjacent to those groups, kind of thing, and they're really just interested in what are you doing, what's going on, who's here, and I think they want to know that. Look, they want to know who's in the neighborhood, basically, and they're quite happy to let us work up there. We haven't seen any real problems lately at all.
Right. I'm about to let you go here because I know you have actually important people to meet with. What am I forgetting to ask you though? What else is important to know here?
Oh, I think we've covered pretty much everything. We've got a couple of good catalysts coming up in terms of Chile, in terms of Mexico. We've got some sort of continuous news flow going on, and we're well funded to keep doing that until well into next year.
How's that news flow going to go chronologically? Talk to me about next month, next year, next couple of...
Yeah, so we should have the next batch of drilling results coming out in sort of the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then usually it's about every 4 weeks, give or take, that we sort of wait for 5 holes. Just seems like a nice round number. Get the assays back, get them checked, and then put those out. So generally every kind of month we'll have drill results out from Mexico, and then in Chile, it depends. We want to have some discussions with our neighbors down there first before we put out anything. So, but that could come out in the next sort of month, 2 months, something like that.
And that's Tim Worman of Fuerte Metals, Strong Metals. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, I'm standing here with Chad Peters of Ridgeline Minerals. Chad, we just caught up, so I don't have too many questions. Besides, what are you doing here? What are you hoping to achieve out of this conference? I saw you at Rick Fro, Beaver Creek. You're going around, running around, telling the story. But what do you really want to get out of this?
Well, we actually have a lot of European shareholders. Some of our core shareholders that have been following us since we went public have actually been institutions and high net worth investors out of Europe. So it was long overdue for us to head out here, reconnect with all those shareholders. There's something different than, you can go and have a Zoom call and it's great, but being able to actually sit down with someone makes a big difference. So, catching up with those old shareholders, reaffirming the exciting stuff we've been having going on with them, I think it's been really productive, and we've actually met some really good new potential shareholders as well.
They basically look at your blue eyes and they're like, just take my money, take it.
Yeah, I get that's part of the whole shtick, so yeah.
What's the story that you're pitching when you go and talk to them right now? Is it the new high-grade results? And what's really, not only what's pitching, because I know you probably adjust your pitch based on what's resonating. What is resonating with investors right now?
We're actually kind of pushing, so the results that we talked about last week, those are certainly important, right? The deals that these deals that we've done with Nevada Gold Mines, with South Ray 2, they're actually starting to bear, some good results now. What I'm trying to push more is less so individual results on one individual project and more the bigger business model that we're trying to push, right? We're trying to be one of those companies that is the go-to for the majors to come and do deals with. We think there's great potential for us to continue adding new projects, making new discoveries. And so what we're really trying to push to folks is like, look, it took a while to get this up and going, but now we're really starting to hum. We're seeing millions of dollars being spent across multiple projects, and they're starting to yield discoveries. And that's what we want our shareholders to really hit home. It's more than just one individual drill hole or one individual project. It's the bigger picture of what we're trying to build. And it's taken 3-4 years to come together, but it's really starting to work.
Are you finding a lot of European institutional interest while you're specifically in Zurich, kind of a financial capital, of course? So is there a lot of institutional interest?
Yeah, actually, we are finding a lot of especially kind of more niche funds and stuff like that. Like the big guys are still staying more in the mid-tier, mid-caps and stuff like that, and the big caps, but we're starting to find a lot of really interesting small funds, family offices that are very excited about the junior space, and they're starting to see that things are trickling down. Forget the last week of gold performance, which has been absolutely atrocious, but they're starting to see the opportunity, and so that's kind of a big focus for us, is kind of those smaller groups that are willing to back small companies like ourselves.
I've been trying to forget the last week in gold with 17 coffees today, so it's not working. Yeah. Hopefully it gets better. What are they asking you, though? Those are what I would call smart money, the small, niche, specific family offices, funds. What are they asking? What do they want to know?
I think the two biggest questions I've been getting is what are the major catalysts for the next 12 months? That's an easy one, right? The other thing is what is our plan to actually monetize these things, right? So it's great. You got these deals, companies are spending all this money. How are you actually going to make, the company some cash, right? And so that's been the two main things, is people want to understand what the next 12 months look like, and then if we're successful, how are we going to try to exit this and make some money for our shareholders? So don't have all the answers yet, but I think we're moving in the right direction, and that's been probably the two main things. Yeah.
Let's recap those upcoming 12 months chronologically. What do you have coming up? We have Hole 7 coming up.
Yep.
Before the end of the year?
So before the end of the year, we're going to have just more, I'd say, updates on the MT survey at Salina. Hole 7 is in progress, will be complete before the end of the year, but I won't see results until probably January, right? So that'll be probably the nearest term catalyst. On top of that, early spring next year, I expect to see drilling to kick off again, either between Swift or Black Ridge. We'll see which one project NGM starts with first. But there is guaranteed spends at Black Ridge. There's guaranteed spends that are coming up at Salina. Both of those projects are going to be drilled in the first half of the year and then carry on into Q3, Q4. And then on top of that, with the results we're seeing at Swift, I probably expect a drill rig to be there probably for the entire drill season next year. It'd be my first inclination, right? So just tons of news flow next year, all funded by our partners. I think it's going to be exciting.
You're doing this in between meetings, so I'm not going to hold you up for too long. You're a busy man. What else? What am I forgetting to ask you here? What's important?
I pulled you away from lunch, didn't I? So, you know what? I think you kind of hit the main pieces there. What I'd really encourage is anybody that's listening to you, reach out, set up a meeting. We do very in-depth meetings, but I think until I get to sit down and really just walk through the entire strategy and business plan, which I've been doing here at the show, that's where it's really starting to resonate with folks, is they're getting kind of the bigger picture strategy. And so I'd encourage people to reach out for a meeting and let me walk them through it.
I'll put your contact information up on the screen right now so they can see it, but it's Chad Peters, Ridgeline Minerals. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you. Bye.